Hey, welcome to the March edition of 3TC. This is Danica Montplaisir, and we're glad to have you with us. Hope you've grabbed your coffee and are settled in for a conversation with Carrie Lynn Wampler and myself this afternoon. Welcome, Carrie. Carrie Lynn, excuse me.
Thank you very much.
We asked Carrie Lynn to talk with us today about maximizing youth spirituality. And so we're excited to have you with us. And before we jump into the topic, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us your family, what you enjoy doing in your free time,
Sure. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, which you may already know. I work at a practice in Maple Grove called the Kelly Institute. My former career was in the church as I did youth ministry and sort of still do, more like as a guest speaking workshop leading role. So really ever since I was 18 years old. So my first love is the church. I'm just able to really merge my work and my love for ministry with the mental health passion that I have as well. I have a family, and we live here in Maple Grove, too. Here's something really interesting. I grew up in Maple Grove. Attended Lord of Light Lutheran Church before it was even a church. We lived in the elementary school. And now I brought my family back there for worship and all of the ministry needs now. So.
Awesome. Well, I want to be aware that we know that there's a little bit of feedback. So if you're getting some feedback on the call, that we know it, and we're just going to have to deal with it today. So again, we apologize for that. Thanks for sharing a little bit about yourself, and hopefully we can trudge through and we'll get things going here. Carrie Lynn, we asked you to...
I'm the next data.
Oh, say that one more time.
The connection is bad. I am not hearing you.
Ah, okay. We're having trouble with the connection. Any suggestions? She can't hear. Neither of us can hear each other.
It's okay. I can hear. It just seems to go in and out.
Okay. We'll give it a minute or two. Try and troubleshoot as we're going. But Carrie Lynn, would you just maybe turn down your mic just a bit, and then go ahead and tell us what you've got for us in the way of, first of all, adolescent life process, as we have that as a framework for the conversation that we'll have in a few minutes about spirituality.
Absolutely. You know what? I don't know if you can help me with this, but I don't know how to turn down my mic.
Oh, just the volume button on your computer?
That's my speaker.
I think it controls the whole volume.
So you think I'll turn my speakers down and then hopefully that'll help.
That's great.
Okay.
So if you want to go ahead and talk us through a little bit of this adolescent life process that you've laid in front of us, so that we can talk then about teenage spirituality.
Well, in my years of working with adolescents, what I have found is, especially through my practice as a therapist, is that there are certain stages that I can identify that kids are going through. I have about 30 conversations a week with kids for about an hour, just talking to them about, what's going on, how they're feeling, how they feel about their parents, and stuff like that. And so because of that, I feel I've gathered some things that I see happening pretty consistently with kids. And so these are my own observations about what's going on in the lives of adolescents and what I can expect expect to see, and therefore what we can all expect to see from them. So the first one is differentiation, and differentiation is a therapeutic term that we use from the Bowenian therapy. I won't get everyone all confused. It's from Bowenian therapy, and it is just the process of starting to free yourself from your family, and the beginning to trying to understand and define yourself independently from your family or all of the things that you have been as you have grown up to believe. This means being able to have different opinions and values than your family members, but being able, a high level of differentiation or successful differentiation includes also being able to stay emotionally connected to your family. So different than individuation, which sometimes you hear about, you can be completely individuated and not necessarily in relationship with anyone. Differentiation has sort of a higher calling in that you also need to be in a healthy relationship and have a healthy relationship with them. So, differentiation, trying to understand who am I outside of the realm or scope of my family. Now, this is a lifelong process for a lot of people, but I understand that it begins in adolescence, and that's where I start seeing, a lot of the acting out behavior and kids not necessarily wanting to, conform to what their parents want them to do. And how that fits in with the work of the church is a lot of times kids associate their church going with their parents and their family, and that's what their family does. Now they're trying to differentiate and come to their own conclusions about that stuff. That becomes a pretty significant process for people in the church. Mm-hmm. The second thing that I noticed with kids is that they are really desire to be competent at something. How they learn to define who they are and how they fit in. All of us can watch the process from 10 years old on up as kids try on new personalities and try fitting in with different groups of people here or there. They try new outfits, they try a new sport, they try all new kinds of things. In the midst of that, though, they are trying to figure out who am I and what does it mean for me to be a part of this world. Well, I often say that kids are desperate to be an expert at something. And so that could mean that they are an expert at, the best singer in the choir. It could be that they're the star of the football team or the most popular person in school. Unfortunately, for those of us who love kids, if they are desperate to be an expert at something, they will cling to even those negative labels that can hurt them in so many ways. For instance, maybe they are like a major troublemaker, or they are, the drug dealer of the school, or, they are, they fail everything. That has real significance, I think, for those of us who love and work with kids, because the competence, we can help identify that for them and help them to understand what is, who they are as people, especially as children of God, and helping them to just be able to define that. The third point is that something I see frequently is kids are going through a process that I call navigating the gray. Navigating the gray is that gray area between black and white, where we get that some things are wrong in life and we're not supposed to do them, or we're not supposed to go there, but we're not exactly sure when we've crossed the line. Mm-hmm. Navigating the gray is starts coming into fruition in adolescence, because the kids, I think that they've started probably where their brain is at developmentally, they've started realizing that very few things in life are black and white. Mm-hmm. So here's a really good example. As adults, we have all are experts at this process. For instance, we know that the speed limit is 60 or 65 on the highway, and but most of us have an idea of actually how fast we can go. Every time I do this as a workshop, I talk to people and they say, well, I know I can go 4 miles over the speed limit before a cop will even notice me. Some people will say, 9, you're fine, 10, you're mine. I've heard that at nearly every workshop I've discussed this stuff with that. So the line is 60 miles an hour, but the gray area before we actually start getting in trouble is around whatever your definition is of that. Well, that gray area is a process I think that kids are starting to catch on to, and they get that. Another example is for kids who go, their curfew is 9 o'clock at night. What happens if they come home at 9:15? Mm-hmm. Do they get in trouble, or do they get kind of a raised eyebrow from their parents when they walk in the house, or what actually is going to happen? Nothing happens when they come home at 9:15. Chances are pretty great that the next time that they come home, they'll be coming home at 9:30, and all of a sudden the next time they come home at 9:45 and their parents are irate. They're trying to figure out, okay, so the curfew's 9 o'clock, but what time am I actually going to be getting in trouble here? This process of navigating the gray is something that they are definitely trying to figure out during adolescence. The next piece is that I believe that kids are intrigued by and have a great desire to understand some things that are unknown for them. And as they mature, there are these things that come onto their radar screen that now they want to understand and be able to maybe feel competent in. And some of those big things are sexuality, chemical use, dating, all of these things that they really weren't that interested in until they hit the tween years. Kids are starting to, want to understand this stuff. So a visual image that works for me and that I use a lot when I do workshops is like if you have a slate explain it as a slate of knowledge, and on that slate there are all of these holes. And kids are looking to fill in this hole to try and make sense of things. So as they are trying to, let's say they're trying to understand sexuality, they're going to be looking for information and where they can get the information to help them fill in the holes in their understanding of what does it mean to be a sexual being in the world. Why does everybody want to date in the world? They don't understand that, and so they're looking for ways to fill in the holes in this slate of understanding or this slate of knowledge. So these are very intriguing things for kids. Often they're afraid to talk about them, so they're, with their parents or their, even with their peers often, especially with the people from church. And so what they will do then is go in search of information to fill in those holes on a slate of knowledge that can be really detrimental to them, especially today in a postmodern world where there are no absolutes and nothing that is absolutely completely true anymore. Kids are filling in information with stuff they're getting on the internet, from television, from all different kinds of sources that can end up being really damaging or hurtful to the way that they look at the world. So the last thing I want to touch on quickly is brain development. And I know that you all have already seen some or heard some people talk about brain development, so I'm just going to talk about it very briefly. The next slide here, we have a picture of brain development, and this picture does a really good job of showing what's happening. You can see on the left there at the age of 5 years old how the green parts and the red parts and the yellow parts of the brain are the part of the brain that isn't finished pruning, and by that I mean it's not, they're not functioning as well as they will. As you can see, at the age of 20 years old, the blue parts of the brain are the parts of the brain that are functioning much better. Now, I understand that when they initially started doing this research on adolescent brain behavior or brain process, they thought if they went up to the age of 20, they would be absolutely in good shape and they wouldn't, there would be no more development after the age of 20. Now I think if they had the billions of dollars to do it all over again, they would go back and want to go up to the age of 25 because they're sure that the process continues until about the age of 25. So what we can conclude from these parts of the brain not in such a developmental maturation process is that kids will generally prefer and look for anything that's sensation-seeking. They like physical activity. They're going to be horrible planners and not have very good judgment. They will have very minimal consideration for negative consequences in their life. And we can expect them to have risky behavior and to behave very impulsively. Now, for those of us who have worked with kids for 25 years or even 5 minutes, you can probably figure out that, this is stuff we probably could have told you way before the brain study, but now we have research that says this is the kind of behavior, why it's happening, is because of the brain. Now, you can look at the very front of I think this is very interesting, the front of the brain there that shows a lot of the brain around the age of 15. That is the prefrontal cortex of the brain, is actually the part of the brain that it's the part of the brain that helps with empathy and, choice and consequences, like if I make this choice, how will that impact what happens down the road, stuff like that. So I think it's really interesting that often adults' biggest frustration with kids is why can't they think through this thing? Why would they make such stupid decisions? And I frequently just point to the front of my head and say, well, because their brain isn't working all the way yet. So that is pretty typical on what we can expect. One other quick study that I want to look at is the Search Institute did a research study a while ago about spiritual development, and they had a wonderful international study, and I encourage anyone to look at it that's interested, about what are the things that really impact spirituality for kids. So here we see that being outside or spending time in nature has a huge impact on the lives of kids. 87% of the kids surveyed reported that was something that significantly impacted their spiritual development. Listening to or playing music has 82%. Spending time helping other people was 76%. Of course, family and then meditation or having some mindfulness quiet time was another way that they experienced that sort of growth in their spirituality. So I think this is a really important study too, as we look at, how can we maximize spirituality for adolescents. So do we want to take a break here, Danica, in case anybody has a question?
Sure. Well, why don't I just make sure that people know, if this is your first time or it's been a while, make sure that you can join the conversation by typing in questions for Carolyn on the right-hand side of your screen in the question box. And we could keep, most of my feedback so far has been about who can hear me and who can't. So let's just keep plugging along here, and just want to make sure that people know that they're invited to enter the conversation.
Great.
All right.
So all of this information that I've discussed so far, I mean, my own observations as I have these many conversations with kids throughout every day, as well as, the brain development stuff and the Search Institute study, what that shows, all of that can help us to inform how we help kids in growing spiritually. I think so many of us go into youth ministry or go into our work with kids because we have had, our spirituality and our relationship with Christ has been something that has been profoundly transformative for us, and that's often ultimately what we want for these kids. And so how do we take this information and plug that into our church and our programming so that we can have maximize the possibility or the opportunities for kids. So first of all, I encourage you to engage in conversation with your kids. Help them as much opportunity as possible. Try and keep communication open to them. So talk less to them and listen a lot more. Try to put yourself in their shoes, understand what it is that they're saying. Try as much as possible not to judge, regardless of what it is that they're saying. Again, trying to keep in mind that they are a work in progress. They're trying to figure stuff out. So do not judge or try not to judge where they are at. I know it's very tempting, especially when we're passionate about our beliefs, to want to preach to kids. But often that shuts them down, and I see this repeatedly in my work with kids. Is the more we tell them the way it is, the less open they are to hearing what we have to say. However, when we can open dialogue and try to understand where they're coming from, try and understand what it is that you're saying, what is it that you're questioning, the more open they're going to be and the more likely there is to be spiritual growth and development in there. We have a process in therapy called motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is essentially that, where instead of telling our clients, this is how it is and this is how you, should see things, we instead try to understand why is it that you come to that conclusion. And, ask, I don't want to get too far into this because I know we're short on time, but encouraging them to talk about their thoughts and their feelings and where they come from. And then when you get in the midst of that conversation, you have much better ability to help influence their thought process. So when we are engaging in the conversation, we're plugging into that navigating the gray that I talked about, their desire to understand, and obviously in what the Search Institute, helping, the conversations with caring adults and parents in their lives is really, all of that helps, are the things that are being touched on there when we engage in conversation. Secondly, experiential things are going to be very positive and highly influential in the lives of kids. So obviously camping, going at camps and retreats, again, this is one of those things where I feel like if we've done youth ministry for a few minutes, we've probably figured out that these are the things that are really having a huge impact in the lives of our kids. So, but it's nice again to know and hear that, to be affirmed in that, if we want the biggest bang for our buck as we are working with kids, retreats and camping ministries are going to be something that are going to be just really monumental in the lives of kids. Any kind of art form, music, dance, expression of art is an experiential way for them to engage with their spirituality. Relationships with others and service is experiential. High adventure stuff like rock climbing, mountain, camping in the mountains, going to the Boundary Waters, stuff like that are all, just really powerful ways to be able to impact spirituality of adolescents. I'm going to move on. The experiential stuff speaks to the 87% in the Search Institute that are impacted by having outdoor stuff, 82% with the arts or listening to music. My own understanding of how important it is for them to feel competent in something, and the brain development stuff you touched on there as well. The third thing is to teach mindfulness. Mindfulness is like contemplative prayer, where it is just being present with God and helping kids to see God in everyday things, experiencing the mystical in God and embracing that. We do that, when we have light a candle at devotions and pray for one another, or lift up the concerns today, or whatever. A couple other things that I want to touch on here before we run out of time. I think the fourth one then is story sharing. It's such an important thing for kids to be able to understand who they are, where they are coming from, to be able to define themselves. So the opportunities that we give for kids to share their own story. I remember when I brought groups of kids up to Lutherdale Bible Camp in Reamer, Minnesota, and we would give them the opportunity to talk about their own process and where they were at, and they would their faith would just blossom when they were given that opportunity. And so allowing them to share their story and gives them that competence, that differentiation that we want to be able to help them have opportunity for. Obviously, the brain development, that has a lot to do with it here too, because they're so emotionally wired. And so when we're able to tap into that and like passion of their own story, then they really can embrace the spirit as a part of that experience. And by giving them that opportunity, we're really allowing them to grow. Finally, I really encourage all of us to be looking for the many different ways that we can have experience God in relationship. And there are a lot of times we just encourage worship or through music or something like that, but there are many different ways, and the more we can implement opportunities for kids to find what particularly clicks with them, the more likely they are to grow in their faith. So from this book, Sacred Pathways by Gary Thomas, I love that he really gives honors all the different ways that we can grow close to God, and there isn't just one particular way. We don't just have to grow in our faith in worship. We can grow in our faith by, some people are more intellectual, so they'll want to read, they'll want to study, they'll want to, be in intellectual conversation. Some people are going to experience God clearest when they are in nature, when they are able to, be outside or be on the lake fishing or whatever. Worship, of course, in many different ways to worship, even through, just listening to Christian music in your car, or, singing at the top of your lungs, or playing the drums, or something like that. Service opportunities. So these are all the different kinds of personalities that we have here listed. So, some people are going to feel closest to God when they're alone, when they're being contemplative. So encouraging them to figure out what is their way of connecting to God in spirit, and then allowing them that opportunity is really helps them to differentiate, it helps them to feel competent, it helps them to navigate those things that they don't understand yet and they're trying to understand in a way that resonates with them.
Cool.
Do we have any final questions? I would love to hear feedback.
Yeah, there's a couple questions, but I just want to say there's a lot of information. We're so grateful. If you have to head out now, we completely understand. I also want to make sure that we get to the questions that are here and honor that we've had some hiccups with our technology here, so we started just a few minutes late. So if you have to go, we'll see you next month or hear from you next month. But Carrie Lynn, you're good staying on for another 10 minutes or so?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Awesome. I have a question coming in from Sean, and he says, worship ranks relatively low on what gives adolescents peace and joy. How can we help them connect better with the liturgy and the community on a Sunday morning? Great question.
It is a good question. I think I don't know that we can make it be meaningful to them. And I'm not sure if that's what you're getting at, Sean. I know for myself what worship and liturgy became meaningful for me the more often I did it. I think, just encouraging that God is present in worship and that God is doing something there. And that's why we go, but then also offering them worship opportunities that don't necessarily take place, on Sunday morning or Saturday evening or whatever. So, because we don't just, worship on Sunday morning, there are many opportunities for us to do that and, to praise God through music that moves us, or, sermons that are moving or talks that are moving to us. And then I think, just through kind of the steady on, encouraging them to go to worship because that's what the community is doing and that's what God is doing, and that is also important. Through time, I believe that they will come to have a greater appreciation of worship. I mean, a lot of people are struggling with this, and I think a lot of people are, trying to make changes in the worship, to get kids engaged, and I don't know if that's helpful. If anyone has any great ideas, I'd love to hear that. One other thought about that, Sean, is get them active in the worship because that helps them with that competence piece, with them, taking ownership of it and feeling like it's part of their thing. So the more they see other kids involved in worship and they feel like that's like kind of their thing, the more invested they will be as well.
Great. I'm always intrigued by, and I was so intrigued by this from youth group to spirituality piece of there are so many different ways, as you talked about, the spiritual personality of kids, that we've sort of pigeonholed kids into showing up at youth group as the only way to be a part of a faith community or being at worship on a Sunday morning. Do you have tools other than active listening and what you call it, the motivational interviewing, to figure out what are kids' spiritual personalities?
Yeah, I do. I have a quiz, actually, that helps them to figure that out. And I don't I'd have to find it. But I do workshops on spiritual personality just to help kids in, identifying that. And if they're not really into Bible study, that's okay. That doesn't mean that's the only way you know how to connect with God. There's all different kinds of ways to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think by helping them find their way, they're much more likely to stay spiritually connected. So I can, wow, how could we do this, Danica? I mean, I'll send it out.
Yeah, if you have it, we could attach it to the 3TC page on the website for people to download. And also, I keep getting questions about, will this PowerPoint be available? The downloaded version of this webinar will be available once we're finished here. So, yes, the answer to everyone's question is yes.
I will send that, then the spiritual personality test, I will send it to you.
Great.
And, it's all in that book, Sacred Pathways, too, but the quiz would be a real quick way for you to do it. So
that'd be great.
I'll have to find it.
Okay, no problem. We'll get it up and send out an email when it's available. Let's just take one more question. We got one coming in from Martin, and he's asking, are there resources for parents and adults in a congregation to educate them about youth spirituality?
That's my knowledge. Well, I mean, Vibrant Faith has a plethora of resources available, but something specifically like what I'm talking about, no, not to my knowledge. Okay. And like I said, because I have this background in the church as well as in mental health, I kind of sit in a unique place, and to my knowledge, I don't know anybody that's putting these two things together.
Yeah, the one thing that comes to my mind is the book Almost Christian, which gives a little bit of background on teenage spirituality and a window into that, but that's the only thing I can really think of other than the Search Institute study. So, well, Carrie Lynn, thank you. So much good information. We're grateful that you could give us just a nugget today. And if people have questions, further questions as they think about this, are you okay with them emailing you?
Yeah, if you go to the next slide, my website is on there, and you can email me. That's not it.
Oh, that's not it. Oh, boy. We're going so...
Never mind.
Okay. We'll also
yes,
post that on the 3TC page.
Okay. It's DEOADVOCATES.com. It's Deo Advocates.
Deo Advocates. Okay. We'll post that on the 3TC page also.
Thank you.
So
Thank
thanks
you for the honor to be here. I appreciate it.
Great. We're glad that we could have you, and we'll look forward to talking to you again sometime soon, hopefully. Just a couple of housekeeping things. PracticeDiscipleship.org. The next thing is coming up on April 7th, so you want to check that out, PracticeDiscipleship.org. If you haven't already, download the Youth Ministry Network app. It's a pretty fantastic resource. It's available for both Apple and Android, so you can check that out. And next month we'll have Mark DeVries with us talking about his book, Sustainable Youth Ministry. That'll be April 16th. So thanks for everyone who hung in there with us through our technical difficulties today. We hope that you have a great afternoon, and we'll see you back here next month.